Abracadabra. Well, hey there, Christina. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Confident Sober Women podcast. I'm so glad that you are back with us to share even more information about all things related to natural wellness and nutrition and coping in recovery. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, let you share a little bit more about your story, and then we're going to chat.
Shelby, thanks so much for having me back again. And it's really exciting to be talking to women in a sobriety and healing journey because even though I don't have a history of substance use disorder, I have a history of all sorts of other things. And so I'd like to kind of talk today about a model that I've developed for kind of my school and for my work as a clinician that really comes out of my own healing and recovery journey.
Wonderful.
And that's the concept of the three-legged stool. So I think of all major mental health issues, physical issues, even, and certainly addictive disorders and addictive struggles as having three big components to them. The biochemical, because so much is actually driven by actual chemical imbalances in the brain of all sorts and nutritional deficiencies, etc. And I'm really big on that because so few other people are talking about it. I've kind of made it my thing. But the reality is that it's not a one-legged stool, right? We need to fix our brain. We need to feed our brain so that it can fuel the rest of our recovery journey. But we have the psychosocial leg of the stool and the spiritual leg of the stool.
Mhm.
And that's really, I want to weave all three of them in today through sharing a little bit about my own story.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah. So I ended up with trauma and then a little more trauma on top of it, that started prenatally, and I had birth trauma and a really painful family where we all loved each other, but there were so many stresses in my family, including my parents' own unidentified kind of maintenance alcohol use disorder. I never saw them drunk, but I don't think I ever saw them sober either. It was just kind of a natural part of our life that alcohol was woven into breakfast, lunch, dinner, and everything else.
Mhm.
Um, but by the time I hit adulthood, by the time I left home, I was a mess. I had major ADHD. My brain was going in every which way and up and down and in circles. So it was really hard for me to keep a job, because 50 odd years ago, most of the jobs available to young women were babysitting, house cleaning, which required some organization, secretarial work, which required organization, and more secretarial work. Well, I got fired from every single secretarial job I ever had because of my little unidentified ADHD brain. So that didn't really help my confidence, which was also very low. Had a lot of shame. I had a lot of depression. I had a lot of social anxiety and just generalized anxiety. I was profoundly shy. Did not enter adulthood with a whole bunch of social skills, did not know how to meet people in the eye, did not even know how to hold a small talk conversation.
Mhm.
Okay, and I share this because now, a couple decades later, um, I'm none of those things,
Right.
right? I don't have depression. I don't have anxiety. I'm confident. I can hold lots of small talk conversations and make other people comfortable. I can speak in front of people. I can teach. I've been running my own business, a couple of them for decades. And so I've come a profoundly long way. And I want to let everybody listening know that no matter where you start from, it really is possible to turn your story around.
Mhm.
It really is possible to create new ways of being in the world, new ways of relating to yourself, new ways of relating to other people, and to find all sorts of things about yourself. At least I found all sorts of things about myself that I never knew existed. It turns out that I have much more of an outgoing personality than I thought I did.
Mm.
I'm much more competent than I thought I was. And I have all these gifts and talents that God actually created me with that slowly over time, I've been able to remove everything getting in their way, step by step, layer by layer, little piece of work by little piece of work, resource by resource. I've been able to let them shine forth and fly free.
Mm. That's incredible. It's amazing what happens when we find that kind of healing that you're referring to, whether it's through
Mhm.
a 12-step program or rehab or therapy or a combination of all of them. I'm a big fan of like the layering on of different tools
Yeah.
as we grow because we need different things at every different stage. I mean, I needed certain things in the beginning of my journey, and then I didn't
Mhm.
really need that as much anymore. And then I layered on other things. So it is so profound, though, what happens when we continue to stay consistent in that work, when we do quote unquote the work, right? It's pretty
It-
magical.
it- well, it's really magical, but it does require a few things.
Hmm.
It requires sticking with it.
Hmm.
It requires keeping on showing up, keeping on doing the next good thing, not actually giving up. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I curled up in a ball and wailed on my living room floor and just gave up.
Hmm.
But surrender is different from stopping, right? And I would pull myself together somehow, and I would pray, and I would look for more resources, and I would do the next good thing and take the next step.
Hmm.
So it's all about not giving up, not staying in despair. Yes, we're going to move through despair. That's, I think, part of this journey. Whenever we've had, really serious pain and trauma and struggle, I think despair is part of the journey.
Hmm.
But we don't want to stay stuck in it. And we don't want to give up in terms of, I can't cope with this. And so I need to move back into addictive, mood altering, or self destructive behaviors.
Right.
Right.
So
Because
what
then
were
we just
you
shoot
what were
ourselves
you
in the foot.
doing? Yeah, what were you doing, if you don't mind asking, like
Oh,
me asking,
absolutely.
what were you so it sounds like you were dealing a lot with more the mental health piece of things, the depression,
Hmm.
anxiety, trauma-based kind of PTSD symptoms, but you weren't
Hmm.
using substances to numb out from that. So what was your kind of drug of choice, would you say?
So my drug of choice was reading. I
Mm,
know people are going to laugh at that, but I was a compulsive reader from third grade onward.
mm,
For a couple of years, I was in a really painful elementary school, was horrifically bullied, and I would bring 3 books to school with me. I was reading in the 5th grade at a high school level, so I would bring um, a fun, like Nancy Drew novel with me. I would bring a science book and a history book. And my teacher would take them away from me one at a time, and I just pull the other out and keep reading. I would read while walking at recess, I'd read at lunch. So it protected me, it comforted me, it taught me vicarious social skills, but it also got in the way of me learning how to interact with other people.
Hmm.
It got so bad that once I learned how to drive, I would, in the middle of traffic, if my anxiety hit, I would pull out a book and read while driving.
Okay.
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 So, addictive behaviors are potentially life-threatening and destructive.
Hmm.
Well, fortunately, I never killed myself or somebody else,
Right.
but I do not recommend reading while driving.
No, I definitely don't recommend that, but I can totally see what you're saying, and like and it's challenging when somebody has a thing like that, right? Because
Mhm.
or maybe it's even I don't know, another creative outlet. Maybe it's art or
Right.
decorating or cooking or something.
Mhm.
But what you were really doing, what you're describing is you were numbing out. You were escaping from your life. You were literally trying to disassociate from your life and escape into another world. And those books
Yeah,
gave you that other
exactly.
world. And so why I mention it is because, reading is a great thing, right? It's like a wonderful thing for many of us. And so, that's a tool actually we can use, just like a lot of
Right.
the other things I already mentioned. And so it's hard because you're like, oh, how could that be bad? And we might want to even
Yes.
promote it. We might want to even say, well, like, let's pull out a book and like, or you could journal or you could draw. And yes, those are coping skills that we often
Absolutely.
promote. But anything that's done and or slash used for disassociating, which is what we're describing, even
That's right.
scrolling or anything, anything.
Absolutely.
We're trying to escape our current life, right? We're trying to avoid discomfort. We're getting away. And
We're
that's where we
getting
can make the
away.
distinction. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And it became very hard for me as I began to move through my own recovery journey and wanted to stop compulsive reading, but also wanted to enjoy reading.
Hmm.
And for a long time, I couldn't read for pleasure without it triggering the compulsive reading.
Right. It kind of reminds me of like eating disorders because
Exactly.
eating disorders are obviously super challenging. I've worked with it in my practice and some in my personal life as well. And we have to eat. We have to eat
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
life. And so there has to be a development of a positive and healthy relationship with food and drink. But with alcohol and drugs, nobody needs that.
No, no,
Nobody needs to drink alcohol or use drugs. Like, so it's not easy for sure to stop, of course, for any of us, but when you don't have to figure out how to have a healthy relationship with alcohol or drugs, like you just eliminate it. But with
right.
food or something like what you're describing, some other
Or reading,
healthy,
you can't eliminate it.
yeah. Yeah, or you might want to. You want to like find a healthy relationship with that. And so that I feel like that's even more that has its own really big challenges. Because you did want to be able to do this for pleasure and fun. And so and since that is your, quote unquote drug of choice, it's like, wow, that must have been really challenging trying to find like a balance with that.
It really was. And for a long time, I could not read compulsively. And then sometimes I could, and
Mm,
then it would catch me,
yeah.
right? And then I would have longer and longer periods, right? This is recovery, where I could read for fun and not let it grab me and get a hold of me. But I want to share a story at the beginning of my recovery journey when I decided I needed to go to a ACOA 12-step meeting.
Hmm.
Now it was about 6, 7 blocks from my house. I was in my mid 20s. And it was, I don't know, 7 o'clock at night. And so I walked and my route went past the bookstore. Well, of course, going to a meeting for the very first time, everybody's anxiety is sky high. And my anxiety was sky high. So it's like, well, I'm just gonna nip into the bookstore for a minute. Okay. An hour later, I realized that a whole hour had passed and the meeting was finished.
Right.
Oops. Okay. Next meeting, walking past the bookstore. Okay, I'm just really going to go in for a minute this time. Just 1 minute. And I caught myself 30 minutes later. And I was like, no, I'm not going to walk into a meeting halfway through. That's not going to happen. Okay, so now I've
Mhm.
missed my first two ACOA meetings because of my own addiction, right? And third meeting came. So what are you going to do? I'm going to take a different route to the meeting that doesn't take me past the bookstore,
Brilliant, right?
right?
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, but how many of your listeners have had the same experience
Yeah.
in moving out of some of their addictive behaviors?
Yeah. Oh, for
Yeah,
sure. I mean, I feel like
right.
it's
Where
just
I'm
so
not going to do
natural.
it this time.
Yeah.
It's like,
So, and
well,
so what did you use to
okay.
sort of get into your recovery? Like how did you, and you've mentioned the three-legged stool and you're also,
Mhm.
kind of an expert on protein and nutrition. And how did you kind of make the jump to that?
So I met Julia Ross, who's sort of the amino acid guru in my 30s, got introduced to that and her nutritionist, and started on my own physical healing journey. And that's when I started learning all sorts of things, went on fish oil as an antidepressant, went on amino acids as an antidepressant, and went on 5-HTP and GABA for anxiety. So those help take the edge off. I also got into therapy, and it took a while to find the right therapist. Some were useless, some were kind of helpful, but then I found one who was profoundly helpful, who was also a body worker and he thought outside the box, which was really what I needed. And so I was able to start healing my very deep wounds through therapy. And it kind of got me out of my shell, helped me discover my own personal power, that I actually had the right to take up space in the world, which I really didn't know that I did,
Mm-hmm.
help me practice verbal skills. But at the same time, I was also becoming a therapist. And so that was helpful because that was identifying some of the wounds, core wounds that needed healing, including discovering that my parents actually were alcoholic, which I didn't know, and that my family was a whole lot more uh, painful and traumatic than I had ever realized before. So just knowing the truth was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then learning how to be a therapist myself, which meant that I had to learn how to talk. I remember the first time, when I was working with a couple, it was a brand new baby therapist, and I wanted to say something, and they actually stopped talking and looked at me and listened to me for like the first time in my life. And I was so shocked, I almost stopped talking. It's like, you're actually going to listen to me? So, the upward spiral. So, upward spiral. Meanwhile, I had started out with a strong spiritual religious faith as an older teenager, but it was fairly narrow, it was fairly rigid, and little by little I had to loosen it, I had to grow, I had to um, shift my way of being spiritual and religious and kind of grow into a whole new relationship with God. Um, Initially, it felt like God, whatever and whoever God was on Mars, like a rich uncle, and would sometimes occasionally randomly send me Christmas presents or birthday presents, but I couldn't count on him. And then he like moved to Earth. And little by little by little, it's like now if you were to ask me, where's God? Oh, God's in my heart. God's everywhere. God's inside of me. God works through me. God works in me. We're buddies. We're simpatico. But it took a long time for that to heal and for that to develop.
Mm-hmm.
And so these three strands, the healing of my trauma and my shame and my shyness, the healing of my brain and getting in the right nutrients. Turned out I had 10 different biochemical drivers of my depression and anxiety on top of the trauma. And then my spiritual life. So they kind of braided together in a dance
Hmm.
over my life. And then what's happened most recently over since I moved to West Virginia about 6 years ago and realized that I really felt called to get my information and my life-saving message out into the world. It was like, oh, you can't get your message out into the world without getting yourself out into the world. Well, all these shy parts of me said, oh, no, we're not.
Hmm.
Oh, no, we're not. Yeah, we're, feeling much safer in the world, but you're talking about like writing books and going on podcasts and so on and so forth, and that's not safe.
Hmm.
So I had to go back into therapy and work on the rest of the layers that I hadn't needed to work on before,
Right.
but which were now getting in my way.
Yeah.
And so I joined, a women's online community and was put into a little group. And even at this age, I remember the first time in this online community seeing all these other little faces in their boxes on the screen. And it was like, they're dangerous. It was
Mm.
the first thought. They're dangerous. I can't trust them. I was in my early 60s. It's like, really? No, they're not. But that was my initial response.
Right.
And so I've spent the last 6 years doing the rest of the work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think we ever really arrive. We're
no.
always on, I always say we're under construction. We're constantly, I hope anyway. I think most of us who are striving for, actualization and spiritual enlightenment,
Mhm.
we have to be under construction for that. We have to constantly be kind of reevaluating things. What's working? What's not working? How are my
Mhm.
relationships? How is my spiritual fitness?
Mhm.
I went through a
Mhm.
big growth period with that a few years ago. I've always been involved. We are a faithful Christian family. We've always gone to, church. That's just how we like to express that. And I was participating in, this group situation for a long time, and it was really wonderful. And then I kind of just grew out of it. Like I kind of felt like,
Yeah,
wow, I think I've done everything I can do here. Like probably not, but like I felt like
right, right.
and right around that time, like I was asked by another woman who I was friends with to join their group, their women's group. And
Mm.
I was like, oh man, this is exact. I just felt like I needed to be fed like in a new
Yeah,
way. And
yeah,
these women were really different. They were not beginner Christians at all. They
right,
are
right.
very, very well studied, well trained, intellectually developed Christian women. And
Mm.
it's been so
It's
whatever it is, whether
exciting,
it's
isn't it,
yeah,
to
whether
grow that
it's
way?
whether it's school or starting a business, whatever it is that's going to bring new growth into your life, it's so impactful. And every week I meet with them and I'm just like, wow, I really feel like my soul is filled.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously we're doing spiritual work, and so that does help to like fill the soul in a different way for me. And but the conversations, although biblically, in nature, they are really much about our lives. It's about our
Yes,
lives and our expression of our
yes.
faith and of our journey. Like, what does this look like? What are we being called to do? And that part has to be fit too. So we don't
Mhm.
ever truly arrive at we're the best we're going to be, like until we die. Like that's it, so
And
age is not a factor.
isn't that a lovely thing?
Yes, I think it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's a
I
beautiful thing.
didn't you I didn't used to think it was. It's like, I want to be there already.
I know.
And other
Uh,
people are there already, so why aren't I there already? Well, it turned out that no, nobody's there already. We're at various stages in our own spiritual and emotional growth.
Right. And I mean, like I said too, similar. I think age is a big part of that. You know, like when we age and stage, we do become wiser. There's a reason why they say that we have more wisdom at this stage because we just
Right.
have lived longer. You know, like I have three young adult children now, and they're way smarter than me. I have to say, they are way smarter than me, but they don't
Uh,
know what it's like to have lived 50 years. They're not there yet. And so they don't have the benefit of the wisdom and the experiences that I've had in my life that have informed me to this point to be able to say like, oh, I know like when things go wrong or bad or whatever, it sucks. Like you're in it, but like I also have enough of those experiences to know like we'll get to the other side. It's just really yucky in the middle, you know? And so that's where that spiritual fitness comes in and that
mhm,
work on like our thinking patterns. And it doesn't always come from therapy either. Like a lot of times it can
mhm,
be just in just our own learning journey. Like, you know, you started a business similar to I did too. And just even that process for me, I'm not a business person. I'm a social worker for God's
huge.
sakes.
Right,
I
right.
mean, I don't know how to do
Learning
that.
how to market.
I
Oh
had to
my
learn that.
goodness.
I mean, and it was amazing. It was not
Yeah.
amazing always. At the time, I did a lot of crying. You know, I was heartbroken many times when things didn't work. But like, I didn't get, even though a lot of the things that I've done in my life haven't been like revenue generating, for example, I didn't not learn stuff. Like, I didn't not accomplish things. It just oftentimes it wasn't what I was looking for. But I still
Mhm,
have so many skills now because of it. I'm like,
mhm.
wow, I do know how to do a lot of this kind of businessy stuff. And if I don't know how to do it, I do know how to find out, or I do know who to ask, and that's part of the growth process too.
It really is, which we simply didn't know when we were younger because we didn't go through it. I mean, I'm pushing 70 now. I'm not quite
Hmm.
there, but I'm waving at it.
Hmm.
And I I think I've learned two huge things across my life. One is that I'm trustworthy,
Yeah. Wow.
that I can find the internal and external resources to to surmount whatever the challenge is in front of me,
Hmm.
and to keep growing and to keep helping people and to keep loving people no matter what,
Hmm.
and that God is trustworthy.
Yeah.
Now, every once in a while, I still look at God and say, really?
I know.
You're really trustworthy? If you were really trustworthy, then I wouldn't be having, problem A, B, C, or D.
Hmm.
And he says, yeah, but I've gotten you through other problems before, haven't I? Like, well,
Hmm.
yeah, you have. Every single one, right? Well, pretty much, yeah. Have I ever really dropped you? No, but
Right.
it felt like it sometimes. Yeah, I know it did sometimes, but have I ever really dropped you?
Right.
No, you've actually never really dropped me.
Right.
So do you really think I'm going to drop you this time? Okay, I guess not.
I know. We become like toddlers, right? We having a tantrum.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't want to do it. Like that's how I feel like I get sometimes too. Like I've been around long enough to know the things I'm supposed to do. I have enough
Mhm.
training, enough recovery work, enough 12 step, enough therapy to know how I need to take care of I know that eating ice cream at night is not really actually going to help me. It's going to hurt me. I know that I don't really
Right,
need that, even though my brain is like, yes, you do. And also you want it. And I want that. And so I'm going to do it you know
right.
um and even though I sometimes don't have enough will to stop that, um I just become like a toddler, and I'm like, I did it last night. I was like, well, I want it. I'm like, well, okay. I mean, and
And
honestly for me
every
this
once in a while you get to have it,
yeah, and the part for me
but
that really
maybe not.
bothers
But
me,
maybe not the whole carton.
the part that bothers me, I guess, still in this part of the journey, and I don't know that I'll ever get corrected, is that I just don't care about that sometimes, and it's like, well, if you know all the things, I know all the things. Like you, I've studied nutrition and natural wellness for over 15 years now. I've read tons of books. I use functional medicine in my life. I take a ton of supplements and use a lot of tools like that. So I know all the things. But when
Right.
I want to do whatever it is that I want to do, or eat whatever it is that I want to eat, that I don't have the will often to like fight that off. And so sometimes that's frustrating for me. I don't know, maybe you have clients like that, and where I'm just
Mhm.
like, why can't, because my husband will say, well, if you already know, then you wouldn't do it. And I'm like, well, that's just not true.
Well, that's not true. And I think part of it is because we are complex human beings and we're never going to maybe be fully healed. And so there are times when these younger parts of ourselves get triggered
Mm.
and co opt the adult.
Yeah.
That's how I think of it. The adult knows what we should do and not do. The adult has lots of resources. And when the adult is fully in charge, things go nice and smoothly. But sometimes these younger parts take over. We
Mm-hmm.
trip over them, they get triggered, they co opt the adult, and they're running the show for a little while. Now, the older we get, the more work we do, the more grounded we are, the less often and the less seriously they take over and try to run the show. But there are still those moments.
Yeah, I think it is the humanness, just the human
It's the
experience, the
humanness.
human
Yeah.
experience. Yeah, I do find myself
And we don't
reminding,
have to be embarrassed. You see, we don't
yeah,
have
and
to
also
be
that's why
ashamed of it.
we can give
We don't
ourselves a
have
lot
to
of
be
grace.
embarrassed by it. Hmm.
Yeah, we can extend a lot of grace to ourselves, which I was never able to do in my younger years, for sure. And it wasn't
Right.
until much more recently, probably the last 10 years or even maybe less, where I really learned how to do that, right? How to
Yeah.
extend a lot of grace. I didn't have to be this
Yeah.
thing I thought I was supposed to be, whatever it was, in parenting
Mhm.
and in life, in with my body, whatever. And I'm like, I showed up, I did what I said I was going to do. And I'm the kind of person who likes to keep my promises, and I did that. But it didn't look like what I maybe what it used to look like. I didn't work out the same hardness, the same with the same vigor,
Right.
and I can just say, but I'm here, I showed up, and I'm good with that. And that is to me that shift in the mindset and being able to even entertain that kind of a thought is a miracle.
It really is the letting go of perfectionism, the letting go of these impossibly high standards for ourselves. I can't ever let myself whatever, right?
Mhm.
And say, hey, yeah, I can. Not can be the end of the world. I'm human. I'm doing the best I can. I maybe, need a little bit of extra support or recording just stopped.
That's weird. Why? Why
Well,
did
we can,
the recording stop?
I don't know. Okay.
Carry on.
Well,
So I wanted to ask while we've been having such an amazing conversation, honestly, and I was just sort of thinking about the practicality of all of this.
mhm,
I mean, you've mentioned the three-legged stool, which I love, and I do think those layers are the big themes, right? They're big concepts, and then we break them down into tiny, small, manageable pieces when we're working with another professional or a sponsor or whoever we're working with to kind of make these changes in our lives. And so I'm just kind of curious if you could boil things down into like maybe one or two like super practical ways that you yourself or what you teach your clients to kind of daily things that somebody could literally leave here and kind of start putting in practice in their life that's going to make a big difference.
okay. Biochemically, eat protein, keep blood sugar really stable, eating protein however often you need to eat it, and using those wonderful amino acids to fill in the gaps. Because even if you don't need to stay on an amino acid protocol, and I don't need the protocols anymore, I did need them for a very long time. Um, they're useful, in the moment, periodically. Some theanine, some tyrosine, some 5-HTP.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with reaching their resources. So, our biochemical resources. Then, our emotional and social resources in the moment. And I think this comes down a lot to catching how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
That when we talk to ourselves, it's so easy to talk to ourselves or to hear the negative attacking voice come up inside. I don't know about you, but I, for a long time, have had this internal critical attacking voice over which I don't have a whole lot of control. I finally learned how to, and it's healed enough that it's no longer in my face, But we need to catch these negative critical voices. We need
Mhm.
to catch when we're hard on ourselves. We
Mhm.
need to catch when our bodies are tensing up because of this internal attack, rather than thinking it's just normal in the way it is. Well, no, it's not. It's shame based, and we get to heal it, and we get to stop it, and we get to pray about it, and it doesn't have to rule us anymore.
Right.
And that's going to happen. So, one way to catch that is periodically stopping throughout the way and checking in, physically grounding yourself, coming back home to your body, to yourself, to your breath, to your heart. Because you see, and now we get into the third step of this leg of the stool. It's in our heart, through our true self, that we get to encounter God,
Mhm.
and that we get to receive God's love, and that we get to be most open conduit for God's love to other people. So coming back home, whether you're doing a grounding exercise or a body scan or just breathing or moving into your heart and praying for a minute or two, these are how we come home to ourselves and we come home to God.
Mhm. Ah, you're so right. And there are so many different tools like that that we know of. Now we have apps for
Yeah.
this on our phone. We can use
Yeah.
technology to help us, right, with things like alarms and reminders.
Mhm,
I use a
mhm.
lot myself personally. I talk about a lot about that with my clients. And you're right, the negative thinking patterns is one of the things that I always like to attack first in my work with people. And even though I do EMDR work in my clinical practice, I'm always obviously we're constantly focused on the negative beliefs about ourselves, but also just when I'm conversing with people or they're giving me like a narrative. It just happened today. It was brilliant.
Mhm.
I find myself being like a more aggressively pointing that out with my clients. Like
Yeah.
my client said something today, and I said, like, please stop using that language. Like, you need to stop. I basically just said it, right? I was like, it
Right.
doesn't sound very
Right.
clinical, but I was like, hey, like this is what you said. You said this, then you said this, and I like you really need to, like, that's hurting you. It's like,
Hmm.
so let's look at how we can change those. And she was like, oh, you're right. I know. I was like, okay, so you're saying I am controlling. I am this. So how about we say, sometimes I'd like to have a plan. Sometimes it really helps me when I feel like I have control of some part of this.
Right.
Even though I don't have control of this, I know how to take care of myself. So there's a lot of ways we can
Mhm.
switch those kinds of phrases that we say just, come right off our tongue until you've done this work very aggressively. But it's one of my favorite things to point that out to people. And it's so fun because sometimes people are like it's like refreshing almost. They give me this lovely response of like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Or I didn't even know I was doing that.
Right.
They'll say, I have one other client, she constantly says, I'm sorry, constantly. I'm sorry. And I said, it's banned now. This in my office, do not say I'm sorry. I catch her all the time.
Yeah.
Stop. And I don't care I mean, in this office, you wouldn't, don't say I'm sorry. No,
Yeah.
like you're not allowed to
Yeah.
say that here. Okay, knock it off. We're here to work on stuff. You don't have to be sorry about anything. We're just going to be working on the things. Just say the thing that you need to say. We're not
Right.
sorry about it in here anyway. Anyway, so it's really refreshing to be on the side where I can actually see that happening for other people, and it's good
Mhm.
for. And then when
Mhm.
we do that in our work, it's good reminders for us too. So,
Well, it sure is, because some of these old patterns, these old voices, these old parts, they hang around. Maybe
yeah,
they hang around less, but they'll pop up, and being able to recognize it with compassion, with
yeah,
love, and saying, well, you don't belong here anymore. That
yeah.
language doesn't belong here anymore.
We don't do
Here's the
that.
language.
We don't do
Yeah.
that now. That's what I always say. We don't do
Yeah,
that.
exactly. That was
So
then, this is now.
it was so great sharing another conversation with you. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I will make sure that I link to our previous episode in the show notes because you've been on our show before. And that episode, it was really profound and in depth, talking about the concept of protein and specifically related to recovery and relapse prevention, which I loved.
Mhm.
So I'll make sure I link to that. But how do you like people to get a hold of you if they want to reach out?
You can always call me. People look at me really funny, but I actually answer my phone, 303 888 9617. You can text me at that number. You can email me at my name, Christina Veselak at gmail.com. And then, of course, I have my two websites, the professional website, which is the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition, where we're actually about to start our next training. So if any of you want to learn how to become expert at amino acid and nutrient therapy,
Mhm.
jump right in. We're about to get started. And then my nonprofit, Eating Protein Saves Lives. And Shelby, I don't think my book was published the last time we talked.
Oh, okay.
Was it?
What is, oh, wow, I
Eat,
love it.
a guide to radiant recovery using food and amino acids to repair the addicted brain and reduce cravings.
I will link to all of those things in
And
the show
it's
notes.
it's it's pretty. It has
Oh,
pictures.
I love
It's
that.
easy to read.
Hmm.
Okay. It's not like something serious. I mean,
Yeah.
there's really serious stuff in it, but I wanted to make it accessible to everybody and to their children. And
Hmm.
so you can get it from my websites, you can get it from Amazon, it's on Kindle. And so I want to share that resource with your listeners.
I'll make sure I link it all. So again, thank you so much for your time and for your work. It's so important, and I look forward to our paths crossing again soon.
Likewise, Shelby.
Take care.